Hello, and welcome to another episode of Actually Intelligent. I'm your host, Max Tone, and today I am joined by Alex Pezl, the CEO and co-founder of Agentech. Alex, thanks so much for joining today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Max. I look forward to this.
Awesome. Well, first, I want to talk about Agentech. I love the name because it's combining, it's a play on Agentech and actually intelligent. Here, that was kind of our idea coming up with the name because we really use the abbreviation AI. I'm curious if you had any fun stories behind the naming of your company.
Oh man, the naming. So it was interesting. We actually started off as a company by the name of Blink.
Okay.
Now, Agentech is in the insurance space, but we started off as Blink, and we got a nasty gram from Chubb, basically saying we own that name. We've trademarked it. Um, that story didn't last very long because it looked like they have disavowed themselves of Blink. It's no longer a thing with Chubb. But at the end of the day, we were getting ready to go to a conference. Blink wasn't going to work, so we started toying around with different names. My former company was TokenX, which is short for token exchange. And so we were like, well, Agentic technology, Agentech. So we came up with that as quickly as we could. We checked all the trademarks. We were able to get it. So it was a labor of love to get that name, but it was a lot of fun coming up based on the fire drill we had in coming up with a new name before our conference and getting our material created.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And I feel like there is so many different companies with like kind of random names or these something like Blink, you would think couldn't be trademarked or copyrighted. So it gets harder and harder to come up with a good name for a company. So that's a good little story there. Tell me more about your background and what led you to fund Agentech.
Sure. So my background is cybersecurity. I've been in cybersecurity, worked for the government, worked for a couple of large corporations, and this would have been back starting in 2002. So after about a decade of being in various businesses, various industries, my goal was to get a broad range of experience across, whether it was CPG, government, financial, getting that experience and that runway with these businesses, and then moving to the professional services side of cybersecurity. Came up with a concept, or I say came up with a concept around the tokenization of sensitive data, specifically payment cards, while I was at MasterCard, and then another payment gateway, a smaller payment gateway, using that to help with PCI compliance. So built a platform, started building it in 2010. We really started commercializing in 2012. It focused very much as advertised. It was the protection of digital sensitive information, like nothing paper, nothing outside of what you could do with a computer. And it was right place, right time, luck, timing, skill, don't screw up the order kind of thing. We built that business, raised a Series A in 2018. Through COVID, obviously everything went digital, payments blew up, so our company exploded. Eventually, we exited our business to a private equity group in December of 21, 9-figure exit. It was great for all parties. They are still, TokenX is now IxoPay. They've also bought 2 other companies in a bigger roll-up strategy. I'm still on the board there. But cybersecurity was the name of the game. And then whenever I moved out of an operating role to the board with now IxoPay, I've stayed very much involved. But after around 2 years, this is right when AI started popping, and started getting back into the technology of it all and out of kind of the executive chair and more strategic and back into tactical and getting into the weeds. Learned a lot about AI. Agentech actually rolled out of a venture studio by the name of 19 Days. I was doing a separate project with them, building another platform, and they said, you should look at Agentech and see what you think. And their hope was maybe you'll invest in it. I looked at it, and they were also looking for a CEO to basically take the technology and bring it to market. And I was like, well, I've got a deeper interest in Agentech than just funding it. I'm happy to participate in that as well, but I'd also like to run it. So we went through our paces, and we decided that we all liked each other, that it was going to work out. I have our co-founder and president, Robin Robertson, has made a name for herself. She built and sold a SaaS company in the property and casualty space. She was my neighbor for a little bit, and then we've just stayed in touch, worked with each other in a variety of capacities. So brought her on, and then the interest was basically Agentech tackles the entire claims workflow. So workflow automation. We're not trying to over AI things. We do a lot of just standard programmatic workflow automation, but where AI has been very beneficial is in the various like mundane and very manual processes that you see in property and casualty in the claims workflow. So they've got a huge labor issue in insurance. Everything is manually driven. So it is ripe with opportunity around rolling AI into automating some of those processes.
Yeah. I'm curious in terms of your journey going from TokenX to the incubator to joining Agentech and helping found it. Well, how is building and scaling different today than back when you first started TokenX?
Building happens in the blink of an eye. Yeah. It's you knew it, you heard about it. If you were involved with it, you could see it loosely. But you really had to find developers who were embracing this technology, trusted it, knew how to take what was produced from the LLMs and then transition it to a platform where they could be supported. Now that's not so much of a thing. So building, you look at our product roadmap, we're talking about rolling out new products month to month instead of quarter to quarter, H1 versus H2, throughout the year. The opportunity that exists to build a meaningful platform that can displace existing legacy businesses there's never been a better time for it. So developing and building this platform has actually been a lot of fun, because once we found product market fit, getting product to market has not been the issue. It's more along the lines of making sure that who we're selling it to are willing and ready to adopt it based on it being AI.
Right. Yeah. Are you facing a lot of challenges with adoption because it is AI, especially in this space?
It's probably very similar to the technology adoption curve. Yeah. With anything, you have early adopters, you have late adopters, you have not willing to adopt. We've seen the whole gamut. I mean, we have there are carriers that exist today that look at what we're doing and they see the value that we're providing. We're saving, massive amounts of money on solving the labor problem, but they are unwilling to adopt it because they are unsure. And even though we're putting the controls in place around privacy, which is my background and my pedigree, even though we're able to overcome all of their objections, their board or their executive leadership, they are not willing to do it in any way, shape, or form. But then you have organizations that are like, hey, we are going to be fast adopters of this because we have an absolute labor issue that we want to displace, get rid of. And what you are providing today is right where we're trying to displace people, because we either can't find them, they don't, they're not trained up enough, and it's going to cost too much to train them. We need to get moving on this today, because the nature of property and casualty is, you can have a significant weather event where you have to staff up in a day or two, right? You don't exactly have all the notice in the world when a tornado drops out of a cloud, right? So being staffed up and being prepared is a huge amount of overhead. So having automation that exists in the most manual, slow, bottleneck processes within that entire workflow is necessary.
Yeah, totally makes sense. And because your background is in security and we're talking about AI, what do you think today are some of the biggest challenges with security in artificial intelligence?
That's a big topic. You look at OpenClaw. I would love nothing more than to tinker around with that, but I don't trust it, like zero trust. So, and I just see more and more about the problems that exist with securing the distribution and how it's implemented and the different capabilities that it has, and there are problems up and down the stack with that technology. And I hate that because I think it's going to be earth-shattering from a productivity standpoint. But whenever you look at the traditional LLMs, I think that there's real opportunity to make sure security and privacy are by design, and that's the way that it should be. So, for example, we've rolled out using zero data retention endpoints. That's actually very important because nobody wants their data to be to live in an LLM, to train an LLM. And especially if they're not able to monetize it, they're actually paying for somebody else to monetize their data. So leveraging these zero data retention endpoints has been a very big pickup for us. We've seen what we felt like were insurmountable barriers actually overcome once we show, here's what we're using, here are the terms and conditions with the LLMs, here's how the data will be used. It stays with our environment until it's processed, but then it's securely deleted, securely, whatever, air quotes you want to use there. But securing, I look at securing AI, and it's really not dissimilar from securing other technologies. There are far more powerful capabilities with this technology that deserve that kind of attention, and obviously like inspection. But really, once you find groups of people who actually think about the security of the technology because of the function the technology serves, this becomes a far easier conversation to have about how do you make sure your customers' data isn't in harm's way.
Right. Yeah. I'm curious then, you mentioned OpenClaw a little bit. In your view right now, what is overhyped or underhyped in AI?
That's a great question. So I think OpenClaw is getting all the hype it needs. I don't think that it's overhyped. I just think it's got a security problem. Looking at the fact that OpenAI hired OpenClaw's founder and creator, I think is a really huge signal in the direction that they're moving because of the very fast adoption of OpenClaw, regardless of security risk, right?
Yeah.
So I look at something like OpenClaw, and I think it's got its popularity for a reason. I don't think that it's overhyped. I think that it's on par with the value that it produces. One thing that I have personally adopted and I believe is overhyped is like Claude Cowork. I played with that. The OpenAI, and I'm not it sounds like I'm sailing the flag of OpenAI. There's like too many other products out there that I think outpace what OpenAI does. But just as a standard comparison of two 800-pound gorillas in the arena, like with my OpenAI, all the connectors work and they are always on. Very few times do I have to go back in and say, reconnect. Okay, well, is this still working? Can you talk to this? Data store, can you do that? Whatever, it works. With Claude Cowork, not the case. I'm not sure, and I tried it on a couple of different systems. I used it browser, tried, that didn't work. Obviously, it's designed to be on your system, so there is that increased security that goes into it. I have an appreciation for that. The functionality was not there yet, and I know that other people really disagree, and that's totally fine. They have other use cases, but for people who are trying to use or find something like an OpenClaw that doesn't have the security risk associated with it, while Cowork does hit the nail on the head there, it's just not reliable. I couldn't get, everybody's like, well, you can pull up many tasks and you just stack them on top of each other. I would do that and I would still be waiting, and wouldn't get timely responses to the tasks that I was giving it. And then 9 times out of 10, I'd click on a tab and it was like, oh, connectors broke. So I ended up managing connectors more than I ended up seeing the value that this platform eventually will provide. They'll solve that problem for sure. But right now I'm like, all right, being an early adopter here was not beneficial for me.
Yeah. And I'm really glad you brought that up, because I also haven't played around with Claude Cowork since it's came out, and I can see the opportunity for it. But as with most of these, I guess, chatbots, obviously Claude Cowork takes it another step forward, but it just requires so much prompting and so much setup and so many things like that I'm going to be spending potentially like a full day getting it all going. And then once it's all going, fingers crossed that it is actually going to work the way that I want it to do without having to go back in and probably having to do some more tinkering with it. So I feel you on that. And it's like, this is it. I can see the potential, but it might not be quite there yet. Like, is there an easier way to get it going? And then also to your other point about playing around with both Claude and ChatGPT, I've been using both. I actually first started with ChatGPT and then switched over to Claude not too long ago, late last year after they had their big Codex launch or their Claude Code launch, not Codex, that's ChatGPT, I believe. But the biggest difference too was just ChatGPT just lets me go and go and go. Whereas Claude, even on the paid models, I hit a rate limit and have to wait a little bit longer before I'm able to do something else unless I pay more. So I found that interesting
for sure
as well. Yeah.
Well, how about you? Like, independent of Claude and Cowork, like, what tools have you looked at that I maybe need to inspect?
Yeah. Honestly, the first place where I went when I was thinking about AI was, how can I set up some automations where I can essentially press a button and it'll go out and do my workflow. And so I know that there are some applications out there. I want to say, I think it's, the name is escaping me. I'm not going to get it right. I want to say it's like Base 8 or 44, something along those lines, where you can then set up, and I think Zapier even will let you do this, where you kind of set up some different automations where you're using different prompts in the LLM along the chain. I personally haven't played around with them, but to me, that like kind of makes a more logical sense, because I'm just one prompt for each individual kind of step along those lines.
Yeah, I need to check this out.
Yeah, they look really interesting. I wanted to also chat. I believe you had put together something called like the LLM plateau, or had this thesis of this plateau for LLMs. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, I mean, and very much it goes back to, there's only so much data out there before you have to create artificial data for now, basically now these models to train on. So like the plateau, like basically there's only so much data that exists before they have to start creating it to teach themselves, right? And is that data founded, is it founded on anything material? Is it, what is the quality of that data? What is, what are they actually training on? So eventually, if these models need data to train on, domain data is really important, but getting access to domain data is going to be very challenging, because you have to have these massive corporations who are like, okay, we'll let you access all of our data. Like, for example, insurance companies, never going to happen. Now you look at news outlets and they're like, well, if you pay us for that, access to all of our news data, then sure, you can use it, right? But eventually there's going to be a data shortage to train these models on. And then my question is, how does performance get better? And I think that is where the plateau actually occurs. I don't know that we're there, close to there. You hear, pardon me, rattlings of these models already creating their own data, or already learning and advancing human knowledge past what we are even aware of, and that now is going on, but they're not sharing that information. So there's really no way to validate or substantiate any truth to that. But at some point, it's like, where do you go next to find the data that you need in order to hit the next milestone with your platform to have superiority?
Right. Yeah. And I find that this is so fascinating. I don't disagree with you, because the internet is vast for sure, but there's only, like we've seen, I mean, they've been training these things for years before they were even launched. They're still probably continuing training and getting better. Like, there's only so much data out there for them to ingest that's on the web. So yeah, that doesn't, I agree with that. And then also my question was going to be, do you think it still holds up, or why or why not? You answer that. So yeah, I'm right there with you.
Oh, I mean, they've clearly thought about this. These are people who have forgotten more about how to train these models than I know. So I do believe that there's an answer for it. I'm just not privy to what that is.
Yeah. I'll be curious to see what that answer is, because we're probably getting there sooner than we think.
Yeah. We have to be getting close.
Yeah. Um, my last question here, and this just is AI in general. What do you think is the most important thing that you have learned about AI since using it? Or if you had a tip or advice for anyone using AI tools today, do you have any advice?
Um, my personal practice is I'm adopting one new tool every week, and I'm not just, again, to use the term puddle deep. I'm not going puddle deep on it like, oh, can I use it? Is it going to, what does it return with my prompt? What is it like? Actually experimenting with a different, paying $20 for a month subscription. I may use it for like co-work 4 days, and well, now that's off my computer. But there are like, to, I guess, name drop, like GenSpark. Holy cow, that has revolutionized how I handle, board decks. That's how I handle, creating collateral for Agentech. So I think that, just experimenting with new tools every week and spending the time to learn what's actually out there available and like productive is very important. I don't know that there's a one size fits all, but really leaning into like what tools are available and committing to, that perpetual learning motion, I think is how you're going to get the most out of artificial intelligence and the platforms that are being created today. I mean, it is remarkable to live in this era and see what is possible with technology.
Yeah. So much more is possible today, even to people who aren't a traditionally trained like software engineer, et cetera. So I really like that take. Like, continue to be playing around with those, seeing what fits, what works, what doesn't. So thank you so much, Alex, for taking the time to chat today and sharing your insights, sharing a little bit more about Agentech. I've really enjoyed this conversation.
You and me both. I appreciate the opportunity with Actually Intelligent and look forward to potentially talking with you again. Thanks, Max.
Yeah. Thank you, Alex. See you later.
See you.